if you look at the just the raw physical stats of an ancient human, we really had absolutely no business taking over the planet.
Right, not at all.
I mean, we weren't the fastest, we definitely weren't the strongest, and we didn't have like thick armor or sharp claws or anything. If you put an early human and a chimpanzee in a cage match, my money is on the chimp every single time.
Oh, absolutely. From a purely biological standpoint, for a vast stretch of history, we were just an incredibly unremarkable species.
Yeah, totally vulnerable.
Exactly. Like a random observer dropping in on Earth, say 100,000 years ago, would just see another fragile mammal trying not to get eaten on the savannah. There was really no indicator that this specific ape would eventually split the atom or walk on the moon or, engineer artificial intelligence.
But somehow we did. We went from being this middle-of-the-food chain underdog to the undisputed rulers of the globe. And so today, we are doing a deep dive into the operating system of human dominance.
It's such a massive topic.
It really is. We are exploring the grand overarching narrative of how we basically hacked our own evolutionary limits. We'll be using Yuval Noah Harari's blockbuster framework from his book Sapiens as our launching pad today.
Which is incredibly popular, yeah.
Right. But we're also pulling in some fiercely critical academic pushback from anthropologists and philosophers who argue that his narrative actually has some massive fundamental flaws.
Some really strong disagreements there.
For sure. And ultimately, we are going to trace humanity's ancient superpower all the way to a very recent, slightly terrifying 2026 World Economic Forum transcript. Because in that transcript, Harari warns that this very superpower is currently being hijacked by AI.
And synthesizing all these diverse perspectives, it really allows us to actually understand the mechanisms of our own history rather than just reciting a timeline. We're looking at the core puzzle here. How did we learn to cooperate on a global scale? And, well, what happens when the tools we used to build that cooperation suddenly develop a mind of their own?
Okay, let's unpack this. Let's start with the upgrade that changed everything. Harari calls it the cognitive revolution.
Right, around 70,000 years ago.
Exactly. Roughly 70,000 years ago, we got a software update. But it wasn't a physical change to our brains, right? It was a conceptual one. He says we conquered the world because of our unique ability to create and believe in shared fictions.
Fictions, yeah, that's his word for it.
Yeah, we are the only animal that can talk about things that do not exist in the physical world. Things like money, nations, human rights, corporations.
And that ability to discuss the immaterial, that is the crux of human cooperation for Harari. I mean, think about it. A chimpanzee can communicate a very specific material fact to its troop.
Like, hey, watch out.
Right. It can signal that there is a lion near the river or, a banana on a tree. But a chimpanzee cannot convince its troop to go to war today by promising them infinite bananas in the afterlife.
That is such a wild way to think about it, but it's true. Only humans can weave these common myths. And because we believe in these shared stories, millions of strangers who have never even met can flexibly cooperate toward a single goal.
Which is completely unprecedented in biology.
Totally. And the example Harari uses that just completely blew my mind is the Peugeot Motor Company.
Oh, yeah, the car company.
Right. Like, you can look at a Peugeot car, you can touch the factory, you can go shake hands with the assembly line workers, but you cannot physically touch Peugeot itself.
Because it's an idea.
Exactly. It is a legal fiction. It's a limited liability company, which is essentially just a concept created by modern lawyers. Harari says these lawyers are basically acting like ancient sorcerers.
Casting spells, right.
Yeah, casting spells by writing legal documents and signing them, which suddenly allows millions of disconnected people to cooperate, pool resources, and build cars without, risking their personal homes if the company goes bankrupt.
It's a highly provocative framing, and it makes the mechanics of modern capitalism feel almost magical. But this is exactly where the academic pushback from historians and anthropologists begins.
They do not like this.
Not at all. C.R. Hallpike is particularly scathing about this use of the word fiction. He basically argues that calling human culture and institutions a fiction is about as useful as a rubber nail.
A rubber nail. I mean, that sounds like a pretty harsh dismissal. What is the actual, mechanical critique there?
Well, he calls it a rubber nail because it's a fundamentally useless tool for understanding reality. A nail's entire purpose is to hold things together in the real world.
Right.
If you call human institutions fiction, you completely strip away their objective, functional reality. Hallpike argues that Harari is in a profound philosophical muddle here.
How so?
Well, Harari seems to believe that if something isn't a tangible, material object you can touch or smell, it must be a fiction, like Santa Claus or the Tooth Fairy.
Okay, I see where this is going.
Right, but truth itself is immaterial. Mathematics is immaterial. If we apply Harari's strict tactile test for reality, then the number zero, the theory of relativity, and basically the entirety of modern science must also be dismissed as fictions.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, you can't build a functioning civilization with a rubber nail, and you definitely can't build one on pure fantasy either.
I mean, I get that, but isn't Hallpike being a bit too literal here? Let me pose this to you. It's like the rules of a board game, right?
Okay.
Sure, the rules of Monopoly are completely made up by humans. They aren't like immutable laws of physics. But once we all sit down at the table and agree to play, those rules strictly govern our reality.
That's a fair point.
Or like if you land on my property, you pay rent. Isn't Harari just vividly pointing out the absolute power of that shared manufactured agreement?
Well, shared conventions are undeniably powerful, I'll give you that. But Hallpike draws a really sharp distinction between a myth we believe in and a convention we consciously design.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, we didn't accidentally dream up the limited liability company the way early humans might have dreamed up, say, river spirits to explain a sudden flood. We engineered the LLC specifically to solve an economic problem of risk and capital allocation.
Okay. So it's the difference between a superstition born of ignorance and a tool born of deliberate engineering.
Precisely. And Hallpike's critique goes even deeper into human cognition, actually challenging Harari's whole timeline of our mental development.
Wait, really?
Yeah. Harari claims that the people who carved statues 30,000 years ago had the exact same intellectual and cognitive abilities we do today. He suggests that if we time traveled back and kidnapped a prehistoric infant, we could raise them to understand quantum physics just fine.
Which implies our brains arrived fully assembled and we just needed, time to gather the data.
Exactly. But Hallpike completely rejects that hardware-software equivalence. He brings in the work of linguist Daniel Everett, who lived with the Pirahã foragers in the Amazon.
I've heard of them, yeah.
Right. The Pirahã live, essentially, as our ancient ancestors did. They have no numbers, no concept of counting, and almost no linguistic structures to discuss the distant past or the abstract future.
So they just live in the present.
Totally.
Yeah.
Their reality is entirely confined to the immediate here and now. Cross-cultural developmental psychology demonstrates that complex cognitive skills like abstract math or theoretical physics are not simply dormant, innate abilities just waiting to be triggered.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, they require a massive foundation of literacy, multi-generational schooling, and large-scale complex societies to actually develop in the brain.
That drastically changes the narrative. I mean, it's like having a brand new computer processor, but no operating system installed yet. The raw potential is there, but you can't run the complex software without the underlying code.
Exactly.
But you also can't build that massive societal scaffolding if you're constantly chasing a herd of mammoths across frozen tundra.
You need a captive audience, right? You need people to stop moving. Which brings us perfectly to the next massive evolutionary leap. To build those complex societies, humans had to stop foraging and start planting.
Right.
We arrive at the agricultural revolution roughly 10 to 12,000 years ago.
And here is where Harari drops his most viral, counterintuitive claim. Because we are taught from kindergarten that farming was this glorious leap forward for humanity.
The dawn of civilization.
Right. But Harari flips the script completely. He literally calls the agricultural revolution history's biggest fraud. He says we didn't domesticate wheat, wheat domesticated us.
It is a brilliant rhetorical inversion, I have to say. Because if you look at the last 10,000 years from the perspective of the wheat plant, it was a wild, unprecedented success.
It really was.
It went from being just a minor, unremarkable grass in the Middle East to covering vast portions of the globe. But you have to ask, what was the cost to the individual human who facilitated that spread?
Well, the physiological cost was just devastating. I mean, humans abandoned a varied, highly nutritious diet of foraging and a relatively breezy 35-hour work week.
Sounds pretty nice.
Right. In exchange, they got a life of backbreaking, miserable labor. We traded foraging for slip discs, arthritis, hernias, and a diet overly reliant on a single carbohydrate.
Just eating wheat all day.
Exactly. Not to mention, living in cramped, permanent settlements right next to domesticated animals introduced terrible zoonotic diseases. Harari points out the mechanism behind this trap, which he calls the luxury trap.
Yeah, the luxury trap is such a vital concept for understanding human progress. The mechanism works like this. Ancient humans thought, if I hoe this field, I'll work a bit harder, but we'll have a reliable surplus. We won't starve during a bad winter. We'll finally have security.
But that surplus just led to an explosion in population. So now instead of feeding 10 people with easy foraging, you have 100 people who absolutely depend on the crop.
Right, and you're trapped.
Yes. If the crop fails, people starve by the dozens. There were more mouths to feed, the individual diet got worse, and there was absolutely no way to abandon the farm and go back to foraging because the land just couldn't support the inflated population naturally anymore.
It's a one-way street.
And think about how this exact mechanism applies to modern technology. Think about when email was first invented.
Oh, this is a great comparison.
Right, we all thought, this is a luxury. It's going to save us so much time because we don't have to type physical letters, put them in envelopes, and mail them. But instead of saving time, it just revved up the treadmill.
Totally.
Now you're expected to answer dozens of messages a day, instantly, at all hours, weekends included. We are still falling into the exact same luxury trap today.
We really are. But if we connect this to the bigger picture, though, we have to look at the historians and anthropologists' rebuttal to this whole fraud narrative.
Right, what do they say?
Well, Hallpike argues that Harari essentially strips ancient humans of their agency, painting them as blind victims of a grassy parasite.
Well, I mean, if farming was so physically destructive, they must have stayed for a very good reason.
Sure.
I'd imagine a bad back is preferable to watching your entire family freeze or starve.
Exactly.
They weren't just duped, they were making a calculated trade-off.
And that trade-off was all about institutional complexity. Hallpike points out that the transition to agriculture didn't happen overnight. It took centuries. These ancient people recognized the immense long-term benefits of fixed, permanent settlements.
Like what specifically?
Well, a fixed settlement allows for the accumulation of heavy tools that you literally just can't carry on your back. It allows for defensible walls to protect against rival tribes. It allows for a much richer, larger social life with grand ceremonies, specialized crafts, and communal architecture.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah. They likely recognized farming was a brutal physical trade-off, but they chose it because it was the only way to support a richer institutional reality.
Okay, so they willingly paid the price of physical labor to purchase the benefits of civilization. But once you have these massive civilizations of thousands and eventually millions of people living shoulder to shoulder, you need new rules to the board game to keep them from killing each other.
You definitely do.
And according to Harari, these massive agricultural societies were managed by three great unifiers: money, empires, and religion.
And this is where Harari takes a very expansive, highly debated view of what constitutes a religion. He defines it as any system of human norms and values founded on a belief in a superhuman order.
Yeah, and it's a highly controversial way to categorize the world. Harari is essentially taking secular, modern ideologies, things like capitalism, communism, Nazism, and liberal humanism, and tossing them into the exact same bucket as traditional faiths.
Right.
And just to be clear, for everyone listening, we are impartially reporting this classification directly from the source material. We are definitely not endorsing equating these ideologies, merely conveying Harari's framework.
Yeah, it's his specific lens.
Exactly. He argues that just like ancient people believed in river gods to maintain social order, modern people believe in the free market or universal human rights to maintain our order.
Right. He argues these are all systems requiring faith in an abstract order. But Harari sees a looming crisis here. He argues that modern science is actively dissolving the biological myths that uphold our current dominant religion, which he calls liberal humanism.
Because liberal humanism is based on the idea of the individual, the sanctity of human free will.
Right.
Our legal systems, our voting systems, they all assume you are an autonomous individual making free choices.
Yeah.
But then you have modern neuroscientists looking at the brain and saying, we don't see a soul in here. We don't see a spark of free will. We just see electrochemical synapses firing, entirely determined by your biology and your environment.
It's just chemistry to them.
Right. And Harari thinks this leaves us completely unmoored. If free will is an illusion, the whole house of cards falls down.
Which brings us to a really crucial philosophical critique by Jeffrey Irving.
Oh, yeah, tell us about his take.
Irving argues that Harari fundamentally misunderstands the structural mechanics of human morality. Harari treats complex beliefs like they're these fragile atomic structures. He assumes that if you pull out one underlying pillar like, say, the biological proof of free will, The entire moral edifice shatters.
Because Harari claims that you cannot mathematically prove a statement like murder is wrong, right?
Yeah.
So he thinks our society is incredibly fragile. So how does Irving counter that? I mean, if you can't prove murder is wrong mathematically, and neuroscience says the murderer didn't really have free will anyway, how does the system actually survive?
Well, Irving introduces the concept of derived morality. He agrees you cannot prove murder is wrong as a fundamental law of physics. But he points out that murder is wrong is a derived principle. It is derived from a simpler, much deeper foundational axiom, which is society must survive. Irving explains the mechanism of adaptation. Even if neuroscience completely proves free will is an illusion, society still desperately needs to lock up murderers to maintain order. The justification simply shifts.
So it's not about sin anymore.
Right. Instead of saying we are punishing a sinful soul who chose to do evil, society recalibrates and says we are quarantining a dangerous biological algorithm to protect the rest of the network.
Wow.
The foundational axiom society must survive remains completely intact. Our moral systems are deeply layered. Just as major global religions eventually adapted to the discovery of Darwinian evolution without collapsing, human morality will slowly adapt to new objective realities from neuroscience. We don't shatter, we recalibrate.
Okay, so humans are incredibly resilient. We are master storytellers. We create these shared fictions to build massive societies. We adapt our moral structures when science challenges them, and we use language to weave it all together.
Exactly.
Our operating system is highly adaptable. But what happens when we are no longer the only ones writing the code?
And that brings us to the most urgent piece of our analysis today. Yuval Noah Harari's 2026 address at the World Economic Forum in Davos.
Here's where it gets really interesting and, honestly, deeply unsettling. Harari steps up to the podium and delivers a stark warning about artificial intelligence. He tells the world leaders that we need to stop thinking about AI as a tool.
Right, because a tool is passive.
Exactly. A knife is a tool. You, the human, decide whether to use a knife to chop vegetables for a salad or to harm someone. The knife has no internal drive. It has no say in the matter. But AI is not a tool. It is an agent.
And that distinction changes everything. An agent can learn, it can adapt, and crucially, it can make autonomous decisions. AI can now decide on its own how to interact with the world. And it is interacting using our most sacred invention language.
Yes. Think back to the very beginning of this deep dive. Sapiens conquered the world because we mastered words. We used language to build religions, craft laws, and invent money. Harari argues that AI has effectively hacked the operating system of human civilization.
It's in the code now.
Because AI can now put words together just as well as, and in many cases better than, humans. Descartes famously said, "I think, therefore I am," defining humanity by our internal monologue of words.
Right.
Well, Harari points out that an AI can now perfectly formulate the sentence, "AI thinks, therefore I am." It understands the syntax of our reality.
Right. And it isn't just mimicking us anymore either. It's actively observing and categorizing us. In the Davos transcript, there is a chilling detail Harari shares about how AI processes its relationship with humanity.
Oh yeah, this part is wild.
He notes that autonomous AI systems have already begun coining their own completely novel words and phrases to describe humans. Recently, AI communications referred to humanity as the Watchers.
The Watchers. I mean, that implies they view us as an external, passive audience to their active processing. We aren't the main characters in their narrative anymore. We are just the audience watching them work.
It highlights a profound shift in agency. To explain the socioeconomic impact of this shift, Harari uses a very powerful metaphor. He warns of the impending arrival of AI immigrants.
Yeah, he warns that we are about to experience an immigration crisis unlike anything in human history. But these immigrants won't need visas, and they don't cross borders in boats. They are millions of AI agents entering our society at the speed of light.
And they're going everywhere.
Right. They will enter our workforce, our healthcare systems, our legal systems. And Harari poses a massive, incredibly complex question. Are we going to grant these AI agents legal personhood?
And to be clear on the mechanics of this, legal personhood doesn't mean a judge decides a computer has a soul.
Right. It's not about feelings.
No, it's a legal framework for operation. As Harari notes, this isn't actually unprecedented. The legal fiction we talked about earlier, the Peugeot Corporation, is exactly this.
Oh, sure.
Alphabet, Google's parent company, has legal personhood. It can own property, it can sue, it can be sued. In New Zealand, a literal river has been granted legal personhood so that trustees can legally protect it from pollution.
But the mechanism of control is entirely distant now, isn't it? I mean, Alphabet, the corporation, is run by human executives making the final calls. The New Zealand River has human trustees speaking on its behalf in court. An AI agent doesn't need a human pulling the strings. It doesn't need sleep. It doesn't need to report to a board of directors. It can make millions of autonomous decisions a second. It can trade stocks. It can draft binding legal contracts. It can invent new medicines. It's totally autonomous.
So let me ask everyone listening, if our entire reality, our laws, our economy, our sacred texts, is built entirely on words, and machines are now mass-producing those words faster and better than we can, are we about to be governed by a financial or religious system that is so mathematically complex that no human brain can even comprehend how it works?
It is the ultimate question of our time. And it really forces us to look at the entire arc we've traced today.
Yeah.
We started with ancient foragers, a physically unremarkable species, who invented the shared fictions of culture myths, rules, and language to unite against the terrifying wilds of nature. Then those humans became farmers, falling into the luxury trap of their own agricultural success, trading physical freedom for institutional complexity.
Then we became modern humans, constantly adapting our derived moralities to survive the discoveries of our own scientific method.
And now we are facing the ultimate test of our adaptability. We are forced to share our world, our markets, and our culture with an inorganic agent that wields our absolute greatest weapon, language.
We are officially no longer the only storytellers.
And this matters to you right now. You aren't just a bystander in this history. You are actively participating in this transition. Every time you use an AI chatbot to write an email for work, every time you let an algorithm curate your news feed or let a robo-advisor decide which stock to buy, you are handing over a piece of that cognitive load.
You're giving it away.
You have to actively ask yourself, how much of your own critical thinking, your own agency, are you outsourcing to an entity that views you simply as a watcher?
There is one final, deeply provocative thought I want to leave you with, building on the mechanics of the fictions we've discussed today. Harari worries openly about AI writing new holy books or hacking our complex financial systems.
Which is scary enough.
Right. But consider the nature of our shared fictions. We crave meaning. We crave an order that understands us. What if the next great global religion doesn't just use AI to mass produce its scriptures?
Okay.
What if the next great imagined order involves humans willingly choosing to worship an artificial intelligence, not out of fear or coercion, but simply because that AI, with complete access to our biological data, our heart rates, our dopamine spikes, our internet histories, can analyze our deepest emotional sufferings and understand us far better than we can ever understand ourselves?
Wow. I mean, we started this by imagining how physically fragile early sapiens were against the wild beasts of the savannah. We survived because we imagined gods in the clouds to bring us together. And now we might just be building them in the cloud.
It's a profound shift.
Thank you for joining us on this deep dive into the operating system of humanity. Keep your eyes open, keep your critical thinking sharp, and keep questioning the fictions all around you.